Hi, this is Logan Garibay, and today we're going to talk specifically about the Dungeons & Dragons tabletop role-playing game community and what we need to do to allow Wizards of the Coast to really scale Dungeons & Dragons, and by extension, scale the tabletop role-playing game community, and where we're holding them back. And I'll give you a summary of it, right? So basically, I really think in order for the tabletop role-playing game community to really scale and really do big numbers and allow our hobby to be robust and large rather than a niche hobby, which it is right now, I think the D&D community specifically needs to accept product placement in Dungeons & Dragons. All right, so let's talk this through. All right, so one, product placement is in every major industry now, right? It's absolutely in the video game industry, which is a industry that is at scale and at prominence. It's absolutely in the television industry. It's in the movie industry, and those are two huge industries that make actual money. Okay, the tabletop role-playing game community really doesn't make any money. I need to address something because a lot of you have been saying it in the comments. You're like, "Oh no, Scott, Dungeons and Dragons is making lots of money right now. Didn't you see the recent, the announcements from Hasbro that Wizards of the Coast made $816 million in revenue last year, right? It's a lot of money. $816 million is revenue. It's not profit, okay? And actually, last year, 2020 was one of the most profitable years ever for Dungeons & Dragons. They still make dirt. They make nothing, right? Here's how you can tell Dungeons & Dragons, the tabletop role-playing game product, is not making any money, right? You know how you can tell when something's not making money now? When the company doesn't talk about it, right? They told you the number for Wizards of the Coast revenue, right? It's $816 million. You know where that money's coming from? It's coming from Magic the Gathering, which has an unbelievably sound, incredibly robust, incredibly strong business model based on collectability, right? And based on play to win, right? Like, you buy the better cards so you can win with your deck, right? Like, there's a lot of really good, but tabletop role-playing game products, especially Dungeons & Dragons, hey, give me $150 for these 3 books, and now you could run campaigns and never buy another book for 10 years. It's a terrible, terrible, terrible business model, okay? Now, what is making money from Dungeons & Dragons is digital products, right? So they talked first and foremost about video games. And one Dungeons & Dragons video game that hits even marginally well could double or triple the profits of Dungeons & Dragons tabletop role-playing game, even if the actual physical books, even if D&D Beyond are selling really, really well, because that business model for tabletop role-playing games is so made in 1974 rather than 1993 like Wizards of the Coast's Magic the Gathering, right? It's a terrible, terrible business model for the seller. It's a huge value. It's a great value for the players and for the dungeon masters, right? Your player's handbook, you'll get 10 years of play out of it, right? They get $50. That's terrible on their end, right? And so the reality is you're just not going to make any money on tabletop role-playing games in the structure they currently are. You can make money on video games based off of them, television shows based off of them, movies based off of them. Those are all sound business models, right? But the tabletop role-playing game itself, at best, it's the goose that laid the golden egg, okay? But the goose isn't worth that much, right? And the reality is, physical books and even the D&D Beyond model of selling rules to players, there's no money in it, right? And I really feel strongly about that, because if you look, you will definitely see that they're not talking about the numbers that done. They will never tell you the amount of PHBs that were sold, the amount of DMGs that were sold, or really even the profit of Dungeons & Dragons separated out, right? From we saw 816, but we didn't really see the numbers on Dungeons & Dragons. All we saw was a revenue number on Wizards of the Coast overall. So when you say, oh, D&D is doing good, all you really know is that Magic is doing really good, right? And the reality is, it's, the numbers on D&D are very low. In fact, in my opinion, the actual physical products of Dungeons & Dragons and D&D Beyond combined, I doubt they make even $175 million. The latest stats we have on this are from ICV2, and they're from like 2018. And the entire tabletop role-playing game industry didn't even make $125 million. Right? So even with the advances, it's still a horrible business model. But you could change all that overnight, okay, with product placement in the game, right? So how would you put product placement in Dungeons & Dragons? Well, you know, like KFC, it's white and red, right? Like, that's their brand. Like, so from that, you know, in Dungeons & Dragons 6th edition, or actually in the new Dungeons & Dragons book, you simply just create an elven faction who just uses KFC's colors. That's it. You know, just the iconic red, the iconic white stripes on their tunics, right? You never say KFC, you know, but if you look at their tunics, you could see the branding, right? Companies are willing to pay millions of dollars for this. You can make profit on a Dungeons & Dragons book before the first book is sold if you go to product placement. But right now, the Dungeons & Dragons community is like, oh, I don't want product placement. They're very precious about it. They're like, oh, I don't want product placement in my game. Please don't do that, right? But the reality is, there are you know, if we want this to scale and we want this to grow, we need to realize we need to do things that large successful industries do. And product placement is in every large successful industry. Product placement should be in Dungeons & Dragons in the next source book. That's my opinion. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.